Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, hello, my name is Kim. I am an author and an illustrator, and here on my YouTube channel I love to share content. I love to share content that is related to books, writing, and just living a cozy lifestyle, because coziness is just everything to me. Okay, I love a good cozy life. Before we get into today's jazz, I do want to do a huge shout out to everyone who follows my YouTube account. I just reached 2,000 followers and I cannot believe it, you guys, because last year during the fall season, I was literally thinking about quitting YouTube. And around that time, I was just not being consistent with YouTube in general, and I just was gonna quit. I would post a video maybe like every other week, but I wasn't being consistent. I didn't see any growth, and I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna quit. And then my husband was like, no, you haven't really given it a good shot. You should be more consistent and then see if it's something that you still want to do after you've given it a good shot. So I told myself, all right, okay, I'm gonna give it a good shot. I'm gonna be consistent. I'm gonna post, and I'm going to start building my audience for real. And sure enough, that's what I was doing. And I started seeing a flux of genuine and loving, supportive watchers and viewers who started commenting on my videos and following my account. And it's just been amazing. Around that time when I was gonna quit, I had maybe 600 followers. And I cannot believe that now I have 2,000 folks watching my videos or subscribing to my channel. And it's just amazing. And I just want to extend my full-on gratitude. Thank you so much for being here. I genuinely just love sharing books that I love. I love sharing you know, the behind the scenes of my author life, what goes down when you're writing a book. I just love sharing snippets of my life in hopes to inspire folks, to let them also just know that they can live an intentional life that they are happy with and comfortable with. So that's why I share these videos, to inspire folks, to motivate folks. So if you're watching and you're not subscribed to my channel, subscribe. It would mean the world to me. So friends, if you have been keeping up with some of my latest videos, then you might know that I wrote a book. So this is my little baby book that is actually releasing next week on the next week from when I'm recording this. So this is releasing May 21st. Today is what, May 14 or something like that? We are about a week from release day, and I am just so excited. I've been busy with all the things of marketing and just doing all the behind the scenes that goes down when you're getting ready for your release day. So I asked in one of my previous videos titled I wrote a book, I asked there if folks had any questions regarding, you know, the writing process. I'm also publishing this traditionally, so this is being published by an indie press. So I shared over on my I wrote a book video if folks had any questions regarding traditional publishing. I did have a very unusual way of how I got this book deal, which I shared over on that video. So feel free to watch that video if you want to watch it first, just to get familiar with what my book is about if you're just stumbling on this video. I will link that down below. But yeah, on that video I just kind of go over everything that my book is about, how I got this book deal, and everything that went behind writing this book. So I did illustrate and write this book. I illustrated the cover. I also illustrated all of the interior images on here. Just a little backstory on what my book is about. My book is a workbook. It is a wellness book. It is a book that takes the reader on a very profound journey on self-discovery and finding their voice, connecting to their roots, connecting to their environment, to the earth. It is a book about reclaiming our bodies, reclaiming our voice, especially in a society that tends to disassociate us from our own cultural roots, from our own authenticity. If you know my work over on Instagram, you know that I share writing, personal writings, illustrations that relate to reconnecting to yourself, to healing, to reclaiming your voice, to feeling empowered. So my work is all about that. And so naturally, when I got the opportunity to write a book, I really wanted it to encompass all those things. So here she is. Now in this video, I am going to be answering some questions that folks left over on my I wrote a book video. Folks asked some questions on there, so I wrote all those questions down. In this video, I am going to answer all those questions. So I have about 10 or so questions on here. These are great questions, by the way. We're talking about different book covers potentially. We're talking about how much I got paid for this. We're talking about how this book might have pushed me out of my comfort zone. There's some amazing questions on here. So grab all the things that you need to grab and let's get cozy and chat for a while. All right, so the first question that I have on here is actually a set of questions from one person, and this person is one of my dearest friends. Their Their name is Gia, and Gia asks, their first question is, did you feel ready when this opportunity first arrived? And I want to say yes and no to this, because you know when you feel like you're ready for something and then it's sort of presented to you and they're told like, yeah, here, go do it then. And then you're kind of met with these feelings of uncertainty and anxiousness and feeling like you just can't do it. Yeah, that was me. That was me big time. I had to sit there a couple of times as I was starting my manuscript thinking to myself, what am I doing? I don't know enough about this. Who do I think I am writing this book about A, B, and C? I don't know enough about this. And I had to calm myself down and remind myself, you know what? Your experiences are valid. Everything that you've gone through, everything that you've collected throughout the years that's related to what you're writing about is valid. And you've learned, you've grown from that. And folks want to hear about that. Folks want to genuinely hear about your life experiences, how you overcame those things, how you learned to grow from there, what you're still learning, because it might resonate with someone out there. And that is valid and important information for folks out there. So there was a lot of me sitting down with myself and reminding myself that I deserve to be in this space. And you know, that's the thing sometimes. You know, for folks who might not know, I am a first generation Latina, indigenous Mexican woman. I am the eldest daughter of undocumented parents, and growing up, you don't really see much of these opportunities being given to people like me. We're often told that you don't deserve to take up space. You're often told that you're never going to make it here and there. You're told that you shouldn't dream big and just get used to these smaller roles in life. And so when you're given a big opportunity like this, I consider this a big opportunity, you feel a little self-conscious that you don't know enough or you are not the right person to write this book. So it was a lot of reminding myself that no, I deserve to take up space. I deserve to write this book. There are folks out there who are going through similar experiences as I am, as I have gone through, that want to genuinely learn from me. It was a lot of pep talking myself, but we made it. We made it through. The next question that Gia asks is, how many cover options did you have and how long did it take to finalize the official cover? Okay, so this cover is the one I illustrated. I illustrated the outline of this, so just this. I didn't do the font. And this was actually the first image that I illustrated that I presented to my publisher, and they absolutely loved it. And I hadn't done anything outside of that. But they were having trouble with the title. They couldn't seem to fix it because at that time they were trying to do it right side up. They couldn't seem to fit the title with the type of border that I had done. So they asked me if I could illustrate a different cover with more space in the center for them to be able to do the title of my book and the subtitle and my author name. So I did end up creating a different book cover, and to be quite honest, I actually really loved the other book cover that I did, the one I'm about to show you guys right now. I actually really love this one a lot more, and I think it's because around this time I was kind of getting over all of these in my art style. I was kind of getting over these like bright purpley and pinky colors that I had been using a lot in my art. I think at that point when I was illustrating my book, my art was sort of growing and it was sort of fluctuating a little bit, and I was starting to use a little bit more muddier and earthy tone colors that I am using now that I really love. So naturally, when I was asked to create a different book cover, I went with those types of colors, and it was this one. So this is the other design that I illustrated for a potential book cover, and I tried to do a lot more space in the middle for the title and the subtitle and my author name. And I loved these colors. I loved the vines that I did around the border, and it's still kind of similar. I still used 3 people in my book cover. I just added a little sort of vine in the middle with a little hand, and I love this vibe. To me, this looks a lot more sort of magical, a little bit more witchier, and that's kind of what I wanted. And this one is, I don't know, this one I still love. Don't get me wrong, I still love this one. It was the very first one that I did, but I think that they went with this one because my book is coming out during the spring, and I feel like the other one was more, I don't know, a little bit more darker. It wasn't really giving off spring, summer vibes. So because it is coming out during the spring season, I feel like they naturally just went with this one because it's giving those vibes, which I'm not mad at. I still love this cover. Now, as far as how long it took me to do this, I cannot even begin to tell you. I think I was in a huge time crunch. Like, I had some very, very big deadlines. Like they were like back to back, and I think for my book cover I only had maybe like a month to finish my book cover. I had sent some rough drafts of what I was planning on doing, so I had to really finalize everything within a month. It was really hard. It was a lot of emailing back and forth, and then on top of that I was doing all of the illustrations inside of the book. So there's like illustrations inside which are not colored in, they're just the outline, but I want to say like I did over 20 of these. They're all scattered throughout the book. So on top of just me designing the book cover, I was also doing all of the interior illustrations. So I think in total maybe they gave me like, I don't know, like maybe 2-3 months to finalize all of that. After I had finished my manuscript and all of the editings were done with that, then that's when I moved on to the illustration process. But it was a huge time crunch. Don't miss it at all. Now the next question that Gia asks is, what is something you didn't get to put in the book and why? Okay, so something that I didn't get to put in the book was, well, not really, because it's still sort of in there. To be quite honest, I wanted my book at first when I pitched it to my publisher, I wanted it to be more of a poetry book, only a poetry book that is centered around wellness and just poetry. So just prose and poetry, but it's centered around the themes of wellness and healing and growth. But when my publisher got back, they told me that this book was great, this book idea was great, but that they envisioned this book being more of a work book, sort of guidebook for folks to read, not just a poetry book. So they wanted me to sort of guide the reader into how to be able to heal and reclaim and do all the wonderful things that I mentioned in my book, rather than just it being poetry and prose. So I had to sit with that and really think if that was something that I wanted to do, because I have never quite honestly envisioned myself as being like a guide or a guru of any sort. And I feel like oftentimes when you read books that are centered around wellness, it's always someone with these huge credentials of like being a psychologist or a therapist or someone who has been doing healing work for decades, and I don't come from that background. I'm just a girl who has gone through some stuff and has learned a lot, and my way of, I guess, educating people has been through prose, through poetry. It has been a way for me to express myself, and oftentimes folks resonate with that, and in that poetry or prose, I suppose I am guiding or teaching folks about something of whatever that quote is about, if that makes sense. So I never envisioned of me writing a solely just wellness book, and that's sort of how it kind of came to be. My publisher told me that it would be great if I would write a wellness book, and rather than just a poetry book, with rituals and journaling prompts and short stories and all the good things. So I didn't get to include a lot of my poetry on here, but there's still a lot of poetry and quotes and prose scattered throughout this book that I did get to use, but I had to leave some out. But I'm still hoping that in the future I can write just a poetry book. Poetry is everything to me. It was the first medium that I started doing when I started this journey of self-love, of self-exploration and finding myself, and poetry has always been that for me. So I still want to do solely just a poetry book, hopefully in the future. And then Gia also asks, what was your favorite part of the entire process? This might sound a little bit cliche, but this was something that just made it feel so magical for me. And my favorite part of this entire process was, there were many days when I was like in a huge time crunch. I would go and do my writing when I was working on the manuscript to a cafe or a local coffee shop, and I would take my little laptop, I would take my notes in my notebook, I would order a coffee, and I would just sit there, and I would have to take a moment to sort of look at my surroundings and be like, wow, I'm working on my book. I'm working on my debut book. It's so surreal. It was such a surreal experience to really sit there and take everything in, because I really thought that these opportunities just would never come by to people like me, that I just didn't have enough to say. That's what I would think in my head, that I was incredible enough, and so who would want to give me a book deal? That's what I would go on in my head. So I would have to sit down in those moments when I would go and work at a cafe and really take everything in. And those moments right right there are some of the moments that I took with me that are still just vibrating in my spirit of how wonderful this entire journey of writing this book has been. Those were my favorite parts of writing the book. Of course, writing and illustrating, but I think it's just really sitting there and realizing, wow, I'm doing something that often felt impossible. Gia also asks, has writing this book helped you in your healing journey? Oh my gosh, has it. You know what? You know when you think that you know everything and you're like, yeah, I'm super knowledgeable in this. I know all about this and blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you how wrong I was. When I started writing this book about healing, I talked about a lot of hard things. You know, I talk about generational trauma. I talk about my mother, you know, mother-daughter relationships. I talk about abuse. I talk about a lot of hard things, but also wonderful things, right? I talk about everything on this book. So as I was writing this book, naturally thinking that for me, oh yeah, I've healed this part of my life. And as I was writing that chapter that had to do with whatever I had healed, a lot of things would come up for me in that journey. A lot of things would come up as I was writing, things that I thought I had healed before, but there was still just maybe residue of pain that was still left over from that experience. And so there were many times when I would have to take breaks as I was writing a particular chapter and really sit and sort of retain that information and either go and write on my journal about what I was feeling, go do some grounding meditations, do my self-care routines that made me feel good and empowered in order to be able to sort of get through whatever I might have been feeling in that moment as I was writing that particular chapter. And I would say that even after I finished my manuscript, oh my gosh, I was a completely different person after that entire process. The person that started writing that book was definitely not the same person at the end of having finished that book, let me tell you, because I had to take a moment. I even stepped away from social media for quite some months after I finished writing my book, because I had to sit with the new person that I was, everything that I learned as I was writing this book. And I'm not mad at it. I think it was something very necessary. Having had gone through this entire experience of writing my book and having some things come up, I actually now even feel like it is good to revisit maybe old things that might have hurt us, revisit those maybe years from now, months from now, whatever feels comfortable, and seeing how we feel about those experiences now, you know, after having gone through healing, and then revisiting those moments later in the future to see how we still feel. Because oftentimes as we're going through that healing and we're trying to heal those things, I feel like our mental capacity can only capture so much, and so we heal, we go through the healing process, we do all the things, and we think we've healed it all, and then years from now something triggers us to think about that experience again. I feel like it's good, it's healthy to revisit those things that have harmed us months, years from now, to see how we still feel, to continue to work towards coping. Definitely different person than I was when I first started writing the book, but so grateful for the journey. Very necessary for sure. And Gia asks, what are you going to do with all those copies of the books? So she's asking because I received about 25 author copies. My publisher sent me 25 author copies of my book, and what I'm thinking of doing is signing those books and maybe opening up a shop to offer signed books. And I'm gonna do like a whole little package ordeal. So I actually have been working on some prints for my book that I want to offer with my signed book, and then it'll be like a couple of prints and stickers. So it'll be my book, it'll be a signed copy of my book, right? And then it'll be some illustrations, some painted illustrations that I did. These are actually images that are inside of my book, but they're not colored in. They are just the outline. They were left like that intentionally because I wanted to give the reader the opportunity to color the image in, because that in itself for me is like a whole ritual. When you color an image in, you're embodying, you're taking in that image, and you are becoming one with the image. It's a whole ritual that I describe in my book. So these are actually colored in that I did. So I'm thinking of offering like a whole little package of these prints with my signed book, plus maybe a few stickers, even a bookmark, and offering those on my shop. So I'm thinking of doing that hopefully sometime this week. I need to hurry up and do that because time is ticking, and we're almost to the point where it's release day. So that's what I'm thinking of doing with the copies of my book. Okay, so the next question from Catfish M.1361 is, would you sign your books? Yes, I would. So like I mentioned, I'm going to be offering signed books on my shop. I only have a limited amount, but also, so what I'm thinking of doing is actually doing signed plates. I think that's what they're called. So it's basically a square sticker, right? It's just like a sticker, and it has the signature of the author, the little sticker. And what you do is you pretty much just stick it onto the book, and that is pretty much the signature of the author on your book. So I think those are called like plates, plaques, signed plaques, something like that. So I'm thinking of offering those on my shop because obviously folks don't from everywhere, from all over the world, don't have access to me, so I can't physically just go and sign their books. So I think the most easier way to do that, and what I've seen other authors do, is just offer signed plates or plaques, whatever they're called, on my shop that folks can purchase for their book. And they're not going to be expensive. They're going to be, I don't know, I don't even know the prices, but they're gonna be like a few bucks. I am also doing, after my book comes out, I am also planning on doing some book signing and live reading events. I am based in California in the Bay Area. I need to talk to my publisher about where we might be going. I think we're gonna stay local, but we might be traveling to some places. So we might be doing some of that as well. So folks will have the opportunity to come to these live events and get their book signed. All right, so the next question is from Meg Reads 9, and they ask, how much did the publisher give you as quantity? I think what they're asking is how much did I receive as an advance. So if you watched my I wrote a book video, then you'll know that I had a very untraditional way of how I got published. I was actually reached out to write this book, and they asked me if I would want to write a book with them and to send over a pitch and a whole bunch of information. They gave me a list of things I needed to do to send over to them for them to consider me. So I did all of that. I sent over my pitch and all of that, and then they said yes. But there was a little trick to it that I would not recommend anyone to do, but I felt okay in that moment in my life to be able to take that opportunity. By the way, I am no expert in this department of how publishing works or advances and all of that. I'm just speaking from personal experience. I know it really depends on the publisher. I think most publishers offer anywhere between like 5 to like 20% of an advance to authors for them to write the book, and then after that, once the publisher meets the advance that the author got, then that's when the author gets royalties from their book. So that's kind of how that works to my knowledge. So let's say, for example, the publisher gives you, I don't know, like let's say $20,000 to write this book. So they'll give that to you before you write the book. Now, when your book is published, you will not make any money from any of the sales after your book is published, or when it's on pre-sale or whatever. You will not make any money as an author until the publisher has made the $20,000 back that they gave you as an advance. And then from there, that's when you as the author starts making royalties from the sales of your book. So that's kind of how publishing works. So for me, I was told that they were not going to be able to give me an advance because my indie publisher is a startup. I am actually their first author. So that's kind of how that went down. They were not going to be able to give me an advance, but as soon as my book starts selling, even during the pre-orders, even you know, as soon as it starts selling their copies, once it's out into the world and available everywhere, I will immediately start making my royalty money, which is kind of the same as to I previously described, right? Because if they would have given me an advance, I wouldn't have started making money right away once my book was out into the world. So it's kind of the same. I don't recommend this because it was quite hard to dedicate time to write it and illustrate it while not making any, or not having something money to depend on financially. But I found that I was okay in that moment to be able to do this. I had other sources of revenue that were coming in that were able to sustain me as I took this opportunity, but it is not the most feasible way. The good news about my book is that I receive a good royalty amount that is actually higher than what most publisher companies offer. And this is something that I really love about my publisher, is that they go above and beyond for their authors. So they give me 40% of the royalties, and then they keep 40%, and then 10% I think goes into production of the book. So I get 40% royalty from every time a book is sold, which is really good compared to other publishers. I found that like it was a good opportunity to my advantage compared to oftentimes you get an advance and and you only get like 10% royalty every time a book is sold. So you really have to pick and choose. You have to look at what your situation is, what your expenses are. I, like I mentioned, had a good sources of revenue, and I had help from my husband, so I found that I was able to take this opportunity. But everyone's situation is different, so you have to really look at what your living situation is, what your expenses are. I had to take some sacrifices and cancel some stuff and do things in order for me to be able to take this opportunity to write a book while not having an advance. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, but I talked it over with my husband, and I decided to take this opportunity. And would I do it again? No. I would not do it again. I would not write another book without having an advance, and I honestly don't recommend it. I don't think any publishers do this, but I mean, I suppose it's the same thing if you're considering self-publishing, right? Because self-publishing, it's up to you, right? It's up to you to write the book. No one's gonna pay you because you're self-publishing the books. You kind of have to just look at what's going on in your life and see if this is something that's accessible and that you can do. All right, so the next questions are from MCC364, and they asked, do you have a favorite quote or favorite chapter in the book? Oh my gosh, I cannot even tell you. I would say one of the most, I wouldn't say favorite, but one of the most very deeply connected and intimate chapters that I am talking about on here is actually the very first one, which is titled Desenredar, which means to unravel. And I really love this chapter because it's actually speaking about my mother. A little bit backstory on me is a lot of my healing journey really started because I didn't have the best relationship with my mother. I know folks call it your mother wound, right? So I talk a lot about mother-daughter relationships in this book. In particular, the first chapter, I started nice and strong with this first chapter. And so I would say that's one of the most intimate chapters in this book. I feel like the entire book is intimate, but this one was one that was, it really just, it hit me in the core, because it's really hard for me sometimes to talk about personal things that have happened with my mother. But it's a very beautiful chapter on how to build empathy for those who have hurt us. And for me, that one was my mother. And so I talk about how I've been able to build empathy towards my mother. It's a very profound and beautiful chapter that I absolutely love. All right, friends, so I had to move to my phone because my camera battery died. So here we are on my phone. So now that same previous question asked if I had a favorite quote from my book. That is so hard to pick. I'm just gonna read one of my favorite quotes from the book, and it's actually from the first offering, or the first chapter in my book. And it says, I befriend the pain, it no longer consumes me. I remember I am a shapeshifter, a recreationalist. I know only expansiveness. I take each moment, each memory, and create strength. I allow myself to fully exist through every sensation and emotion. I do not need to hold back, overlook, or be passive. I grant myself full permission to unravel and be as I am, as my most beautiful, chaotic, and enchanting self. So yeah, this is from the first chapter in my book, titled Desenredar, and that's usually how all of my chapters start, with prose, with an affirmation, an incantation, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, that's one of my favorite ones. The next question that they are asking is, do you have a favorite illustration in the book? I do. I really do. So I kind of have like two, okay? So the first one, it's this one, and this is from the introduction chapter titled Conjure, and it's this person who is on top of these flowers with a flute singing to the birds, and her braids are just flying in the air. I absolutely love that image. I also really love this image here. Let's see. I'm gonna cover her right there in the middle because I don't want to get flagged. But yeah, I also love this image here. Really love it, which is actually these same prints that I'm going to be offering in this little book box deal that I'm going to be doing soon. So it's this one right here, and then it's this one right here. These two are some of my favorite images that I illustrated inside of my book. The next question that they ask is, has publishing a book pushed you out of your comfort zone or caused you to grow in some way? Absolutely, absolutely it has. I feel like even now, as I am on the other end of having already written the book and it's, you know, out into the world, people can pre-order it and whatnot, I get a lot of public speaking jitters. I often feel, again, that I don't belong in these spaces and I don't feel knowledgeable enough, even though I'm the one that wrote the book, to be out here speaking to the public about my book. So I feel like these experiences have definitely pushed me out of my comfort zone. I'm usually someone who tends to stay closed in, likes her safe space and only her safe space, doesn't want to be out and be seen. I have a problem with being seen, which is kind of weird because I post online. But the thing with posting online or sharing videos here on YouTube or sharing videos over on my Instagram is that I have the control of editing the video. I don't have anyone right now immediately watching me. And the same over on Instagram. I share my art, I share my words, but I'm not over there just sharing like my face all the time. I tend to be someone who likes to be behind the screen. That's just how I feel like I thrive, because feeling seen in a way where I'm just speaking and people are just watching me in real time really give me the jitters. But this experience has definitely pushed me out of my comfort zone to feel more stronger, to feel that I deserve to take up space, as I was saying earlier, in these moments right here, that I have something valuable to teach, to talk about. Yeah, it's still teaching me how to get out of that comfort zone. It's teaching me how to grow as a person. It has even been teaching me how to grow my self-esteem even more, and it's been a wonderful experience. The entire process from writing it to illustrating has been such a wonderful learning experience. Hard but wonderful. There's so much more that I've learned about myself now that I have written this book, and I'm excited to get to play around with the person that I am today and see what happens. Who knows what's gonna happen now. Once the book is out into the world, I'm excited to see what other projects I get into and how those look like for me now as this, not revamped, but just new person that has sort of grown out of the other person who I was. The next question is from Carolyn Huggins, 2715, who is my mother-in-law, actually. She's so sweet. She's always supporting my work. I love her. And she asks, did you ever want to give up on the process? Oh my gosh. When didn't I want to give up on the process? I wish my husband was here right now so he can come on here and tell you guys how many times he had to sit with me and pat my back or hold me or hug me and tell me that everything was gonna be okay, that I deserved to be writing this book, that everything was gonna turn out right. To be completely honest, like I mentioned in the very beginning of writing this book, there was a little bit of a disconnection. Like I mentioned, I initially wanted to write just a poetry book. And so I feel like my jitters or the disconnection came from not having envisioned before that this was the kind of book I was going to end up writing. And so I felt a little bit of a disconnection when I first started writing the book. I didn't feel like this was the kind of book that I wanted my first book to be about. I really wanted it to be a poetry book. So that caused a lot of self-confidence issues, a lot of feeling like I wasn't worthy to write this book because it wasn't something that I had prepped myself to, knowing that this was the book that I was going to end up writing. The disconnection was there, but you guys, when I started writing the book, I cannot tell you how much or how happy I was that this was the book that I ended up writing. This was the book that was necessary for me to write. And I mentioned in one of my videos before how grateful I am that this is the book that I ended up writing as my first debut book, because this book is really going to set the stage for any other book that I write. If you want to get to know me as a person and why I'm going to write these other books that are in the works, I'm gonna dig into novel writing and fantasy and poetry. That's what's next for me, right, as a writer, or at least I'm planning for that's what's next. I would say that if you really want to get to know me as a person and who I am and all these themes that my future books are going to have, if you want to get to know why I'm going to be writing the way I write, you're really gonna get to know all of that about me through here, because this book is such an intimate book. I share so many things about myself, about my journey, about my healing journey, my self-reclamation journey in this book. And it's really the book that has set the stage for me to be the person I am today, to be able to, figure it out about how I want to show up in the world, what I want to show up as, what I want to do. This is really the book that has sort of put me together, put all these pieces of who I was to who I now am, if that makes sense. So this is the book to get to know me. This is the book that's really gonna set the stage into any of the other future books that I write. I'm glad that everything turned out how it did, even though I still want to write that poetry book. I still do, and I still am, but I'm so excited that this was the book that came out. It's a book that I didn't know I needed to write, but I'm glad that I wrote it. So that was the last question, friends. Thank you again for those who asked the questions. If you guys have any further questions, leave them down below. I'll continue to answer them maybe in the comments below or in other future videos. We'll see, but it's been a fairly few busy weeks. I'm gonna continue sharing the behind the scenes of this author life that is very new to me, and that I'm going to be sharing with you guys in future vlogs. I'm currently working on a vlog right now of things that are happening as I am prepping for release date. So remember to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos. I'm excited to share all of the behind the scenes with you guys. And again, thank you. If you want to pre-order my book, if you want to learn more about my book, I will leave all the links down below. If you're watching this before my book comes out and it's still within the pre-order timeline, my book comes out May 21st, you can claim some free goodies that are attached down below. All you need is the receipt order number. Make sure you take advantage of those. I am doing 3 free incentives for folks who order my book. Take advantage of them because they're amazing and I created them with love and integrity. So yeah, check those out. Again, friends, thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate you. Remember that you can create the life that you want because you so deserve it. I will be seeing you in a video very, very soon. Take care and bye for now.